Hello, and welcome to Becoming a Change Agent in IT for the New Normal with Paul Lewis, Global CTO at Hitachi Vantara. For the last 25 plus years, Paul has focused on technology R&D and innovation, IT business strategic plans and governance, security and risk management, software and infrastructure architecture as the CTO and senior executive technologist of several financial services organizations from startups to large business services providers. Paul, I think you are today from Toronto in Canada. So good morning and glad to have you at Atos Tech Days, right? You are going to share with us how IT leaders can enable the future of work and the future of IT when the future is now and after the COVID-19 crisis. Just a last word, if you have questions, please go to the Hitachi Vantara virtual booth where the Hitachi Vantara virtual team will be happy to answer your questions and share additional information in real. Now, I hand it over to you, Paul.
Thank you very much and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am Paul Lewis. I'm the Global Chief Technology Officer for Hitachi Vantara. I've been here 7 years, but prior to this, I was CIO and CTO in banking for 17 years. Still, the vast majority of my perspective is an enterprise consumer of technology versus a provider of technology. But I have had the opportunity to see industries around the world, many geos, many different industries, and have an appreciation for what it means to operate both IT and OT. I spend a good portion of my time talking with CIOs and CTOs, publishing content on digital transformation and social innovation, and do spend a good portion of my time in education, both in Masters of Business Analytics and Masters of Artificial Intelligence, and making sure that we have a talent pool ready to take over when we're ready to retire. Today, I want to talk about digital transformation and sort of data as a whole. But I think I'll start a little bit with the new normal. In fact, what's happening today. I've had the privilege over the last few months to have conversations with a couple hundred CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, and other executives within IT. And it's very clear that January 2020 is very different than June 2020. Fortunately, the conversations we've had usually are about people first, right? The first third is about health and safety. I want to make sure that myself and my team and my extended team into the business and my customers and my shareholders are safe and secure and healthy. They're at home and they're washing their hands and so on and so forth. I then worry about jobs and economy. A good portion of these businesses had furloughed staff. We want to make sure that jobs are still exist in the future and the economy recovers over time so that we all sort of get back to normal. But most of the conversation is about culture and communication. How do we now extend the culture of a 100-year organization from mostly working in the office to mostly working at home? And then how do we communicate differently? I can't manage by walking around anymore. I need to delegate and federate. And how does that sort of change the way we think about things? In fact, we think of it as 4 different concepts. I'm used to working with people at a table, right? Making real-time decisions, whispering about the past meeting. And now we're in a more formal video conferencing world, right? Even a one-on-one conversation feels a little bit more formal because I can't see you, right? I can't look into your eyes. I can't see your body language. And even though I might have an open door policy, it still feels a little bit abstract. I'm used to management by walking around, cubicle to cubicle, shaking hands, you're meeting each other in the hallway, and in fact, doing work that way. Now it's a federated exercise of work, right? I have to determine a list of tasks, deliver those tasks amongst people around the world, and then come back daily or weekly to figure out how we can bring it all together. There was bad guys, there will always be bad guys, but now in fact there are more bad guys and they're better at what they do. All the free time we have, now that we're working at home, they have free time, and they're getting much better at the phishing and virus and social engineering attempts. We're used to coalescing in the office, right? We commute, we get on the train, we get in our cars, we go to the office, we meet. Now we don't do that. Now we're all sitting in our homes. And in fairness, it's different around the world. Some parts of the world are far on a different part of the curve than other parts, but there will be waves. This isn't a one and done. There will be waves, and it'll affect the next 24 months. Okay, so beyond the people-related conversations has been the technology-related conversations. So outside of that first third, we talk mostly about these 4 quadrants. We think that January 2021 will look a lot more like today than January 2020. So it's these 4 conversations. First one's federated collaboration, which really just means now that I have tens of people at home, how do I still communicate and collaborate and create in the same way? How can I duplicate an environment where I'm walking into a boardroom with a white whiteboard with 4 or 5 people and create something from scratch? It's easy to have a meeting. It's much more difficult to create and invent in this segregated way. I'm also worrying about sort of the physical environment. I'm worried about the office itself. How do I duplicate the office environment? The webcam, the microphone, the chair, the lighting, all of these are just as important at home as they are in the office. And then the cultural change. I've now shifted from, in many ways, a single office culture where I'm working 9 to 5, wearing a suit and tie, to a federated culture where I have tens of thousands of different cultures and they can choose how they want to work. In fact, what I mostly hear is, since you're inviting us into your home, you get to make the rules. So if your rules are working 7 a.m. to 10, taking several hours off, and then working to the evening, that's fine. Let's change the way we need to communicate with each other. The second one is resiliency versus capacity, and that's on twofold. So the first one is, in IT, we've had to change where our resources sit. We didn't get new resources in real time, but we've had to triple up our service desk. We had to find resources for VPN licenses and VDI infrastructure to support that. I've had essential workers and task workers at home that have never worked at home. Therefore, I have far more calls into my service desk to support that, far more issues. In fact, some of these people haven't worked at home, don't know how to change the password, don't really know how to access the VDI. These are new complex issues. So ITSM becomes a primary requirement there. On the other side of this coin is the difference between performance and availability now. In the office, I had an expectation of sub-second response time. At home, I'm perfectly fine with a 3-second response time. That's because I personally think that there are other things in my office that are adding to that latency. Might be my laptop or my Wi-Fi or my wires or my ISP, all of those things. However, availability becomes important. It's not 9 to 5 in the office anymore. It's now 6 a.m. to midnight. And therefore, the availability of the application becomes more important than the performance of that application, and that changes how IT needs to think. The third one is cybersecurity. This is the bad guys, right? Not only are there more bad guys, they have more time, and therefore we're seeing a pretty big uptick on phishing attempts and viruses and other penetrations in the environment. Plus, they're getting much better at what they do. There are far more people clicking on these links because they look just like they're coming from IT. Remember, a good portion of the people that are not in the office or haven't been before have never gone through security training. So they still is a new concept to them that they need to worry about. And then finally, the digital transformation pivot. That's saying there are a new series of projects now based on my requirement to deliver projects in 3 weeks instead of 6 months. And because of that, I now have a new sense of agility. In fact, there are 3 different types of organizations. There are the thrivers. These are the snack food companies. They're up 25%. Or the media streaming or the video conferencing. They're worried about scale, right? They're worried about making sure that once they reach the other ladder of X amount of transactions or X amount of customers, that they don't encounter a security performance related problem. On the other side of that spectrum are the challenged, right? These are people that have an in-person experience, like movie theaters and grocery stores and theme parks and planes and hotels. These are all focused on having zero or near zero revenue, and they need to survive. So they're shifting their resources from sort of an OPEX resources to a capital resource, digging into the bank account and getting government subsidy. They're worried about sort of the long term. The middle type of bucket there is the changers, where they might have had some in-person experiences like a wet signature on a mortgage, or they only sold their products in a niche store in a mall that had been closed for 4 months. They've had to worry about changing either new distributions or new supply chains or a new way to consume their products. That's sort of the digital transformation pivot. They're doing other projects to support that. So if I were to summarize that sort of last 4 months, it would summarize this way, that we think January 2021, if not 22, if not 23, will look a lot more like today than January 2020. There's a long tail on some of the decisions that we've made of recent to which we think might last years, if not permanent. One of them is the work from home becoming the default, not the exception. There has been organizations culturally that when I hire in the city and that person needs to come to the office. Well, that's changed in that recent time. Now I don't have to do that. Now I can access these resources anywhere, which has two positive values, right? So the first one is I can now reduce my office space, or at least change my office space from offices to meetings. And from that reduction opens up new value, new innovation, potentially going to IT. The second one's about my talent pool. Whereas I only could find those talent in my city, now I don't have a postal code issue. I can actually look beyond my city into the Tri-City, into the province or state, into the country, into the multiple countries, into the geo, into the world. I can now look for my resources anywhere and still provide the same value. The second one is agile IT is the only IT, which is just another way of saying there's an expectation from my executives to deliver projects in 3 weeks instead of 6 months. And that expectation has come with some reduction of risk tolerance. And I don't mean tolerance of security, I mean tolerance of process. So things like not needing 30 people to make decisions. Things like the CFO doesn't have to make every financial decision above $1 million. Things like I don't need an RFI, RFP, RFQ to make all IT acquisitions. It also means I have to think about IT a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that specifically. How I consume IT needs to be different. How do I architect IT needs to be different in order to meet those 3-week timelines. And then that digital pivot, you are probably in one of those businesses. If you're a very large company, you have multiple line of businesses. Each one of the line of businesses fall into those types, and you probably are thinking about projects and people and technology different. So the top considerations going forward, leadership is culture, which is just another way of saying, now I know who led by management by walking around and who can lead in a federated sense. And those people who can now lead and collaborate and create in this world are probably the newfound leaders that I'll promote over time. Edge is primary, which is just another way of saying the desktop at home or somewhere outside of my office is now not the poor cousin. It's not something I worry about after the fact. It is now the primary data consumer and creator. And therefore, I have to think about all of the security and performance related issues to support that. Now let's talk about digital transformation holistically. I talked about the pivot, but digital transformation in general is about delivering your products in the way your customers wish to receive them. Or to put another way, your digital disruptors are taking away customer segments you currently want to attract, or they're taking your customer segments directly from you. You now need to worry about making operational logistic change. You need to create new business models to support attracting customer segment you currently don't attract now, and you need to create new customer experiences. If you have in physical channels, you need to create digital channels. If you have one digital channel, you need 10 digital channels. You need to create a transformation to support that kind of growth. We generally think of these as a series of business initiatives, but of course, all digital transformation is IT transformation. I like to think as a simple definition of digital transformation is just the difference between more and better. A digitally transformed client engagement is a highly mobile, highly social, highly interactive, and in fact, highly transactional environment. I'm not going to have a 30-year relationship with a bank anymore. I'm going to have a 1-year relationship and one product. And if I don't like that product, I'm going to delete that app and download a new one. The integration is more important than the end product itself. The service availability is more important than the multiple product bundles. This is a highly better environment. Unfortunately, we live in the more environment. We live in a very hierarchical both org chart and the way we deliver on our products and services. It's more products, more features, more functions. And if I want to do that, I require more projects, more infrastructure, more power, more ping. I require more to make that happen. And even in IT, it's the same. In IT, I have a list of line of businesses and I want to deliver more projects, and in those projects, more features. And if I'm in IT infrastructure, I need more people, more compute, more storage, more power, more data center. It's a very more environment. So how do we shift from more to better in IT? It's about thinking about what we're responsible for differently. If we think about data as being distinctly different than infrastructure and applications, you can just look at the life cycle difference. Infrastructure lasts 3 to 4 years. In fact, over time, I'm going to have to replace infrastructure even faster than that. The innovation that's coming out is far denser, far faster than it ever has before. If I sweat it longer than its natural life cycle, I'm going to have performance, scalability, availability related problems. If I add infrastructure to infrastructure, I have cost related issues. It's going to cost me more time, more energy, and more people to support that. Application, same kind of thing. It lasts longer, potentially up to 20 years, but at some point I have to replace it. If I don't, I'm going to have performance, scalability, availability related problems. If I add applications to applications, I don't have a cost problem, but I do have a simplification, rationalization, modernization problem, right? I've built the same function point many, many times with many, many different teams. But data is the opposite of that. Data is valuable from the point that I create it to the point that I delete it, if I ever delete it. In fact, data is my value creator in the organization. The more data that I have, the more likelihood I'll find nuggets of gold in my big pot. The more data that I have, the more precise my algorithms become. The more data that I have, the likelihood I'll create insights for the organization. Data is the value creator versus the others. Data is the better. Infrastructure and applications are the more. Just trying to get to the next slide. It's not letting me get to the next slide. Oh, there we go. Okay, but it's not going to be easy. The reality is we bought a bunch of infrastructure over time. They might exist in a variety of different line of businesses. We have a whole bunch of data and a whole bunch of different types of storage. Depending on how big our business is, we have compliance and legislative and regulatory issues. But those aren't really the biggest issues. The biggest issue, of course, is skill set, right? I have a team of 12 people that deal with my data, and most of them are dealing with MIS. Well, how am I supposed to do something new, innovative, insight creating? How am I supposed to do science if I don't have the expertise or the team to support that? Skill sets is where I lack, and skill sets is where I need to focus. And so we understand your basic challenge and all those things. You have a data-centric challenge. Where's the data? How do you make sense of it? How do you protect it? How do you secure it? How do you steward it? How do I derive insights? What do I do with my applications? Do I put it in the cloud? Do I have a diversification strategy? If I put it in the cloud, is it safe and secure? How's it going to connect to the other applications? How do I balance performance and availability? And I have a whole bunch of applications that are sitting on the mainframe or the AS400, or I don't even have source code for. What do I do with those? And then how do I add the skill set to my team? How do I make sure that they have an understanding of what can be done with the current technology? How do I upskill, reskill, replace? How do I create a culture of innovation so that we're always looking to do something new instead of always looking to do something more, right? How do I shift to a better culture instead of a more culture? So you need a set of strategies. Some of them are compliance and governance. Some of them are automation like DevOps. Some of them are looking at data as a separate entity like data ops, where I'm looking at the orchestration, visualization, integration of data as a separate activity than the data ops automation, so DevOps automation that we're delivering on. I kind of think of it as a strategy for digital transformation. And it's these four things that you might look at the organization as a whole, or the chief data officer, or the VP of data, how they get measured. Store means not just storage, but where data is created. At the edge, at the data center, in my customers, in my shareholders. I now need to steward it and manage it and protect it and make sure it's compliant. In fact, it's the Paul Lewis $5 at the grocery store. That transaction I now need to steward. Enrich says, how do I add context to that transaction? How do I look at all the other purchases in that store? All the other stores' purchases have been made. All of my competitors' purchases have been made. All the family members of Paul and what purchases have they made? Give me a 360-degree view of Paul and the store and the product. How do I create context and enrich this data? Activate says, how do I create some insight out of it? I have to connect to 1,000 points of light. I have to orchestrate data quality. I have to use machine learning and AI algorithms, mathematical statistical algorithms to derive and find that insight and then visualize that insight. And then finally monetize. How am I going to create value, revenue, operational efficiency with that insight? Can I sell data for data's sake? Can I use my new understanding of Paul to sell him more products? Can I sell Paul a product, but then also sell him some data-centric alerting in the future? Or internally, how can I use correlation causation analysis to look at my fraud? How can I use champion-challenger analysis to make better decisions? Or simply, how can I be more efficient? How do I save 15 minutes in that 8-hour service delivery? All of those are monetization activities. And the end result of this is KPIs for a chief data officer. So why does Hitachi believe that we can help you solve these problems? Because you rely on us for things like our rock solid reliability and availability. We're the only ones that have the 100% data availability because we understand what it means to operate the business. Remember, Hitachi Limited, the $100 billion company, builds big machines. We exist in the OT world. We operate manufacturing. We operate hospitals, and therefore we understand what it means to apply that IT into your business. Of course, the Hitachi and Atos partnership is long. 10-year relationship, 100 million plus deals won, many wins even just in this particular year. We jointly deliver on offerings that are SAP HANA-centric or video intelligence-centric, IoT-centric. We're jointly building both our services, our hardware and software products to solve complex client problems, including things like, the fastest and best SAP HANA deployment for across a variety of industries. We also come together, both our hardware and software, to deliver on, transformation excellence, both our storage and the DS5000, the Bull Sequana for our edge deployment, our intelligent edge, and others. Hitachi Limited, the big company, the $100 billion company with 383,000, builds big machines, hundreds of manufacturing plants, bulldozers, commercial retail stores, banking. We provide payment systems. We provide capital leasing, hospital MRI lab equipment, bullet trains, elevators, escalators. We exist in the world. In fact, what we use more often is we are more like you than any other technology provider because we operate the businesses to which you sell. And even in IT, we certainly provide IT infrastructure, data center, software, analytics, but we actually consume more than we sell. In fact, of, let's say, 500 petabytes of storage, we'll actually consume 1.5 exabytes. And in that, we sell IT products to you. We actually operate IT on behalf of other brands within Hitachi. We operate as much as we sell. Of course, we have products within Hitachi Vantara to help sort of solve those digital infrastructure problems. Things as edge as a primary, where we're looking at the edges where you consume and create data, and you need to protect that. You need to sync and share and collaborate. You need a VDI delivery for this edge, so you can do things like data science. If I'm consuming and creating data in a data science in a federated way, I need to protect and secure and keep private. If we're talking about agile IT, it's about a level of automation, moving from diagnostic to prescriptive and predictive with the data center. It's about scale up and scale out technology, adding node by node to ensure that as we're going through these waves, you can scale out with your new requirements for new transactions, and then retrofit that equipment to something else when the wave comes back down. And looking at a different way to purchase and acquire to support this new agile need. And in fact, talking about that, you need to shift really from project acquisition to project allocation. In a real sense, moving from 6 to 9 month projects to 2 to 3 week projects means it's literally impossible for you to design, architect, have delivered, rack, install, configure equipment in 3 weeks. It's not physically possible. And therefore, you've got to look for a diversification of how you're actually going to acquire. You can still continue your project acquisition, where most of us have done this for the last 30 years. Now, it maintains your control. It's a little bit slower. It might take months to do that. That's why it's the tail end of a project. However, if you want to shift to project allocation, you can look at faster paced activities. And still within your control, you could do things like utility pricing or capacity on demand, or a managed service that's customized directly to you. Or if you want to shift to more of a convenience, you could have either acquired a bunch of equipment and have it just sit in your environment, probably not your best bet, but at least it's within your control, or have a and use an as a service experience. So you can get that real-time project allocation, but somebody else is doing that work on your behalf. In fact, they might have such a predictive and prescriptive environment that they do that before you actually require it. And of course, we have a means to help you do that. Because we are also in financial services, we have a very broad, flexible ability to look at capital and leasing and a variety of other consumption, both utility and subscription-based consumptions for you to help with this migration. And finally, our social innovation is where we spend most of our time in terms of our sort of thought leadership. It's not just about creating value for the shareholders, but it's bettering the earth. It's about solving child poverty. It's about helping with the pandemic. Things like ensuring that our spare manufacturing space is used for creating healthcare equipment. It's about ensuring that any of the PEP we're giving out to the local regions. It's about ensuring that our $4 billion worth of R&D can be used in the help for research in the pandemic. That was me. That was Hitachi. Thank you very much.